Welcome back to a new video, and this occasion is Timeless 3. Alright, so I gotta say that this is a monster delay. You have a lot of controls and a lot of functions behind the controls. Just to keep this video organized, I'm gonna show you the plugging in stages. First, we're gonna take a look at the main controls, then the output, then the display and the tabs. We need to talk then about the effects, and finally, we're gonna end with the filters. But you also have a modulation section, and I'm gonna end this video just showing you what all the modulations can do. Okay, let's start with the main controls of the delay. I will always start from a clean patch. So if I play something back, you have your main controls. The first control is going to be your delay time, and by default, it's going to be in milliseconds. And right here, the knobs are really responsive. If I click and drag the mouse, drag the control, it's going to go pretty fast, up and down in time. It can go all the way to 5 seconds or all the way down to 5 milliseconds. Now, sometimes if you go up and down with the mouse, it's going to be really crazy. So if you want to fine tune, you need to hold the shift, and then you can go in small values. But if you need to be a little bit more precise by double clicking, you can always enter whatever is that you want to do. In this case, it's going to be 100 milliseconds. And if I do 1, for example, it's going to go by default to 1000 milliseconds, which is, 1. I'm going to control click to go back to defaults, and this is the main control, the delay time. Then on the outside, you have the delay time pan. And because, this is a stereo delay, you can offset the delay times for the left and the right channel. And of course, if you make just a tiny little bit, notice I'm doing 1%, it's going to be super wide. Now, if you keep going over and over, you're going to be offsetting the left from the right a lot more. And right here, you can see the percentages. But if you want to know the times on each side, it will tell you which times you have for the left and which times you have for the right. And if I go real aggressively, it's going to be way different. Again, if you want to go back to default, control, and then click, and it will go back to center. I'm going to go back to clean, and the second most important control on a delay is going to be the feedback. So if I play it back with the feedback, and this one works just like the other knobs. If we double click it, we can enter a value. If we want to fine tune it, holding the shift, we can do so. So less feedback is going to give you less repetitions. If you go up, it's going to give you a lot more repetitions. And if you go over maybe 70%, you're gonna get this effect, right? The always feedbacking type of effect. All right. Now, just like with the delay time, we can offset the panning of the feedback. And I'm gonna be going almost to 70%. And when we move this, this is what happens. And of course, the display is super important to know what we are doing. We are getting most of the feedback from the left side and not the right side. And if I go all the way to the left, we only hear feedback on the left and not on the right. Same goes for the other side. If I go to the right, we just get it on the right. And to reset back to defaults, just control and then click. Okay, so let's go deeper. You have a lot more functions right here. So when we start, and you know what? I'm going to go to a clean patch. So right here at the bottom, it says delay. And when you hover, it says tap. So this means that you can tap the time that you wish, and it will just take it and move to that very specific time. Now, since you might have an offset, and I'm going to do it right now, whenever you tap, it will take whatever you have as an offset into account, and it will just, offset by keeping the values that you are selecting. All right. How is doing this? Well, because remember, the main value for the panning is percentages, not really the time. So, behind the scenes is gonna do the math for you. And all right, so right here by default, and I'm gonna go back to center, you always work with the milliseconds, which means free. If you go to this button, this one is the sync, and notice it says free. But if you wanted to, maybe go to a quarter notes, you can go there, just click it, and it's gonna go and position this knob on that value, which is gonna be quarter notes. If I go to 8, it's gonna do so. If I go to if I wanted to go to stride, and whatever other value, and it's gonna go there. So this is, of course, how you sync. You select a division and then triplets, dots, or straight. Now, I'm going to be going to maybe 8 notes. So when we go there, we can see the percentages right here, and this the delay knob is going to be right there. So this is, perfect time. What we can do, if I wanted to, I can move this knob and offset it from, the perfect time. Notice that we get right here the values in percentages. I can go back, just go back to perfect time if I wanted to, just there, and 100%. Or again, I can just go all the way down and just offset it from the perfect timing that we have right here. And this is a nice way, to kind of, let's say, emulate an analog delay and make it not so perfect if we need to. All right, so back to the clean setting. Right here on the sides of the feedback, you have the plus and the minus, and of course you can click it. So this is the phase invert, and what it will do, it will phase invert the sides before they are fed back to the delay input. Now, if I keep the default settings and I play the same guitar again, and I click it, and I'm gonna go maybe to short feedback and maybe short times, something like that. And when I click it, notice that it sounds like maybe enabling a chorus or something like that. And of course, you can do the same thing on the other side. And you get just a tiny cool effect. Now you can get something else when you go up in the feedback and the time. You have something a little bit longer. If I click this one, notice it's going to go wide. And you get a nice effect, nice modulation. And of course, again, everything, it's super wide. Then you have the crossfed, which is how much feedback goes to the other channel. It's just, a very common control for a lot of delays. I'm going to be doing something like that, and maybe, I guess that's fine. I'm going to be crossing, and that's what do you get? We get a completely different effect. Notice that right here, these tabs, they look different. Now, it's a little bit more obvious if I offset them. And when they are offsetted, I can go up and we see how much we are doing your crossfitting to the other channel. If I go really crazy, well, it's pretty much nothing, but if I do something in between, we can hear it. If I do less or nothing, so you get a much more smooth type of, repetitions. All right. Then back at the center on this point, you have the other options. You have the ping pong, and as you could guess, this is going to be a ping pong. By default, it's going to be off, but you can choose between left and right, and then right and left. So if I go to left and right, of course, it's going to be that ping pong type of effect. And first, when we start the delay, maybe I'm going to go back to nothing. I'm going to start it. The first delay is going to be in the left, and then it's going to go at the right, and so on and so on. That's why it's the left and the right. If we want the first ping in the right, we need to choose R to L, and so on and so on and so on. All right, so, I guess, I just don't need to explain this. It's a ping pong type of effect. The next control is not super obvious. This is called the read mode. And you have two different options. You have tape and then you have stretch. Now, if I play something, you know what? I'm going to go to a vocal. So right now we have something going on and so on and so on and so on. So if I move the delay time, we can hear that pitch detuning. And this is very normal for some delays. Now, it is normal in this case because we are in the tape mode. So when you're using the tape mode, it's trying to emulate what you get when you use a tape type of delay, which is, pitch detuning. If you change it to stretch, it's going to change the algorithm. So now if I play it back, I'm not going to be getting that pitch detuning when I move the delay time. It's a completely different process. What is it? I'm just not getting it. If I go back to tape, we get that detuning. So if you don't want that, detuning when you modulate the controls, you can go to stretch, and it's pretty good. Now, I gotta say that when you use tape or not tape, the delay sound is exactly the same. It's not that you're using a tape type of emulation for the whole plugin. It's just how the time changes will react when you use tape or you use stretch. And alright, so then you have the freeze, and this is again a very common button for a lot of delays, just like, the crossfade and the ping pong. So if I play something, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be playing it right now, and I'm going to be doing a little bit more feedback so I can sustain it. When I'm playing a key, and playing a synthesizer right now, maybe it's not too bright. There we go. I'm getting, of course, the feedback and the repetition. So when I click this, it's going to be taking whatever was at that point in time. It's going to keep looping it. I'm not playing the synthesizer anymore. This is, of course, going to freeze the sound. Now, when you do this, the delay, it's occupied, so I can go to my synth and play at the top, because, you cannot use the delay. But it's going to keep, this the sound just looping and looping and looping. Now, if you want to get out, you just click it and it goes out. And if you want it again, you just click it, and whatever is on loop is gonna, loop it over and over and over again. And just like this, you can create really cool effects, especially when we use the effects. But, we are not there. If you want to turn it off, you just click it and you turn it off, and it's gonna die. And okay, so we just covered all the options that you have right here. You have a lot more. We need to talk about the output and then the delay tabs. And okay, so if I play something, we get the delay, that's fine. So right here you have your main controls, and these ones are super important because you can select or decide how much wet signal you get. And if I go all the way up, notice that the first one, which is the dry input, our input, goes away. We are just getting the delayed signal. If I go down, we blend a little bit more of the input and a little bit less of the wet signal. If we go all the way down, we get nothing. So, again, pretty simple control. Notice at the bottom, you have the lock. So this means if I'm going all the way wet, I can just click this. And if I want to toggle or go to different presets, the mix will stay at 100%. And this is, very important when you put this plugin on a bus, for example, and when you're sending to that bus, you want to keep this at 100%. I'm going to control click to go back to defaults. Then you have this one, and these ones are related. This one is the wet level. So we can select the mix right here, but if maybe it's still too loud, I can go down to the level, the volume of the wet signal, and it's completely different than the mix. I'm just going down in volume of the wet one. Now, usually on most plugins, you get dry and wet, or you get a level for the wet. You don't get both. On this one, you get both. Now, then you also have the panning, just like, everything else. If I go to the left, we only have the wet signal on the left side. If I go to the right side, you only get it on the right side. I guess you get the point. Now, then, of course, this plugin is stereo. So if you have something that makes it stereo, going all the way up, it's going to be full stereo. You're not making it more stereo. But if you can go down and just make the effect mono. Or maybe select something in between. Now, at the bottom of the plugin, you have the in and the out. And maybe you're thinking, yeah, I know. This is way too simple for me. Yeah, of course, it's the input level, and then you have the output level. So, this is important because you can drive the plugin go up, or maybe you can attenuate and then compensate on the other side. Now, if you want to reset back to default, remember it's control, click, and then if you hold the alt or the command, you link both controls. So as you go up, the other one goes down, and backwards. Why the input level it's so important and the output as well? Because you can use effects. So if your signal is too low or maybe too hot, well, it's going to affect whatever effects you are using, and it will affect the repetitions as well. So again, if it's maybe too low, you might want to drive the input a little bit more, or if it's maybe too hot, you want to drive it a little bit less. Now it's time to talk about the delay display. Now this one has 3 different functions. The first function is going to be to affect the delay time and the feedback. And I'm going to go back to that guitar. So I can go to the tabs and I click it. And if I drag it horizontally, it's going to affect the time. You can see it right here on this knob. Right, so click it and just move it with my mouse, just dragging. Now if I go vertically, it's going to affect the feedback. So I can modulate this. And of course, all of this can be modulated with the modulators. But we're going to talk about that much later. Alright, so, you have a lot more power right here. The second function is going to be, of course, to see whatever it is that you're doing with your controls. Right? It's pretty clear whatever it is that you do right here. That's, super important. And then you have the third function, and the third function is going to be the taps. Notice right here at the top that you can see something that says taps. Now I'm going to go back to clean, just go back to default, and I'm going to click on the taps. So with this one, what it will do, it will just give you a way to create your own taps. So if I double click here, and then just here, this is going to be, whatever taps that you create within that repetition, within this block. Notice that everything gets repeated. So now if I play it, I have some custom taps. And this is something really cool. Now what you can do right here is that you can create up to 15 additional taps. Now if I go back to clean, this will be still on the taps mode. So it's kind of like independent from the patch selection. So once you're here, you have a lot of different ways to create and edit and delete the taps. Like I said before, you can just double click and create a tap. When you go right here at the top, notice that you get a plus icon. When you click it, it's going to add a tap. Now, when you double click and you hold the second click, I'm holding it right now, and you can move it vertically to go up in level, or you can still, move it horizontally by holding the second click. And notice that when we are editing, you have a window, tiny little window right here. You can, of course, turn off the tab, but you can see what you can do. And you have pretty much 3 different values that you can edit. You have the loudness, the volume or level. Then the percentage is going to be the time. And then you have the panning. Remember that you can go to the left or the right. So, you can edit the panning. If you are out of a tab, you just can click it. And then once you click it, again, you just drag and you edit the values. Now you have more ways to edit whatever tab. I'm going to go to a tab, and like I said before, when you hover it, you get this screen. You can disable and you can delete it if you must. Now when you go to a tab, and I'm going to go right now, I double click it, it's going to go right here and position you so you can change the values manually. And tiny little trick, if you go to your keyboard and you press the tab key, is going to position you on the level, the timing, and the panning. Now, if I add a tab, notice at the bottom that says control when I hover, pan, and then it says control. So it means that if I hold the control, I can move the mouse or horizontally, and it will, pan whatever control that whatever tab that you have. And of course, if I do something like this and I just, click this one and then hold control and I move it, then these tabs are going to be, notice that they're going to the other side. So when I go back to the main view, you can see how much you're doing on those tabs. If I go to a tab and I right click it, it's going to give you more options. You can, of course, disable it just like we did before. We can reset the panning if we wanted to. And again, we can delete it. So, we can always do right click and select an action. Now, if we have a lot more different tabs, and I'm going to create them right now, what you can do if you want to edit all at once, you can just click on an empty spot and just drag and select many tabs at once. And if I want to edit, in this case, if I wanted to do the panning, I can do so for all the tabs. If I wanted to do the level, I can do so as well, the level and time. works pretty much just like editing one single tab. Now, another thing, again, you can do, if I select all, I can do right click and I can reset the panning for all the different tabs. Now, there's a tiny little trick right here. If I go to an empty position and I do right click, you have more options. You can, of course, add a tab right there where you right click it, or maybe you can randomize the tabs. It's just going to create a randomization for you, right? Just gonna do it something random. And if you want, you can, and I'm gonna go maybe less tabs. You know what? I'm gonna create them right now. If I right click it, we can space them evenly, or maybe do ramp up, or maybe do ramp down. And this, of course, will massively affect whatever sound you're trying to create right here. Right? Super cool. If I go down, go back, and I go to, I don't know, ramp down, it's going to be completely different, right? And of course, you can edit all of this just like we did. Now, if I want to disable all, you can, or if you want to reset the panning, or maybe if you want to delete all, you can do so. I'm gonna create a few more, just like this. If you go to this tiny little arrow just next to the tabs control, if you click it, you can have the same options that we got from before, but we have something more. You have different profiles, so these are just like presets for the tabs. I can just click there, and it's gonna give me that. Or you can go to save as, and it's going to, of course, save whatever is that you did right here, and then you can reuse it later. And okay, let's talk about the effects. And all of this is just going to be very simple. So I'm going to be playing a clip. It's just an acoustic guitar. If it's a little bit too loud, remember what I said? If it's too hot, you can go down on the input level, even in the output. So, as you could guess, you can click and you can turn it on or you can turn it off. I'm going to go do more repetitions. If I go up on the drive, this is just saturation. The more you do, the more it's going to be saturating the wet signal, not the dry signal. So if I go up, this is going to be completely overdriven. Again, we just don't need to overthink this. This is just drive or saturation control. If I go all the way down, I can turn it off, and then I'm going to go to the lo-fi. Now the manual says that this is a combination of sample rate and bit rate reduction. If you do a tiny little bit, it's going to add the lo-fi. But if you keep going up, at some point, it's going to be completely destroyed. So this is maybe too much. Well, maybe. Depends on what you want to do. This could be, a nice little effect if you modulate the lo-fi. All right. Now then you have the diffuse, and I'm gonna turn off the lo-fi. Now the diffuse is something that we are getting from on most modern delays, but this will give you that delay plus a reverb type of effect. If I play it, maybe I'm gonna do something like that. I'm gonna go up on the diffuse, and we get a more reverb type of sound. If I go up on the diffuse, it sounds like a reverb. So this is what you will get. Now, it depends on what you want to do. If you go to less diffuse, you still keep that, vibe from the delay. And if you go all the way down, all the way up, it's pretty much a reverb. Right, but again, it's just completely up to you. All right, I'm gonna go all the way down, and this is what the diffuse does. Now, then you have the dynamics. So I'm gonna be playing the other one. I guess this one is just a little bit better. So, maybe I'm gonna go here and just go up on the feedback. If I go to the right side, notice that the repetitions are crushed, a lot more aggressive and punchy. If I go to the other side, it's much cleaner, and it's because it's gate and expansion. So it's just cleaning everything, whatever it's going into the feedback loop. So it's not super aggressive. is normal. If I go down, it's just much cleaner. Same if I go to the vocals. If I turn it off, this is just much, it's super dense. If I turn it on, it's a bit cleaner. And all of this depends on whatever material that you're trying to delay. If it's maybe too dense, well, you just go down and you clean it up. If it's lacking a little bit of punch, well, then you go up. Just like, you know, a gate or a compressor. Alright, so then you have the pitch. And for this one, I'm going to go to a synthesizer. Okay, so I'm back to my synthesizer, and it's a super dull synthesizer. It's mono and, you know, nothing special. And I'm back to clean. Now, we need to talk about the pitch. Now, if I enable this, if I play a key, nothing happens. And I'm going to go up on the feedback so we can hear this. I'm going to go all the way up on the pitch, and I'm going to be playing one single key and hear what happens to the repetitions. So this is what the pitch will do. On each repetition is going to pitch by whatever amount you selected right here. In this case, it's 12 semitones. So it's 1 octave up on each tap or each repetition. And if I go the other way, the other side is the same, it's pitching down. And I'm going all the way aggressive so we can really hear what's going on. If I play something and make it more aggressive, he's gonna start getting an effects type of deal. Now it sounds super boring. I'm gonna go and do it like that. And it sounds a little bit better, but still, you know, I'm going all the way up, 1 octave up. Now if I go down and I do just a tiny little bit, it's not gonna be so, you know, so massive. That is that we get a more chorus type of effect. And the synth I'm using is just super dull, and this just makes it sound cool. So going to low values gives you that, you know, coarse or modulated type of vibe. Now then you have the other options right here at the top, and I'm gonna go back to 12 semitones so we can really hear what's going on, and I'm gonna reset back to center. If I, of course, play something, we know that on each repetition it's gonna go up by 1 octave. But if I enable this and I play it 1 key again, if you're using good headphones and you're not watching this from a phone, you can hear what is going on. So this, what it will do, it will mirror the left side with the right side. So if on this one you're going all the way up, on the other side it's going to go all the way down by the same amount that you're selecting right here. We are going really aggressively. Maybe if we go to small values, it just gives you just a nice effect, and it's still, you know, very aggressive. I can even go to 0.33. And it sounds very cool. I'm gonna unclick it and just maybe go all the way up. So we know that if I play something on each repetition, we get that, you know, detuning on each one. But if I click this one, it gives you 2 options: inside feedback and outside feedback. The inside feedback is the pitching up or down on each tap. If I go outside feedback, that is each repetition sounds the same. If we are going up 12 semitones, an octave, all the repetitions are going to be 1 octave up. And then again, this will give you a different vibe. If I maybe go down, and then I'm going to go up on the feedback and just separate it. And let me adjust this value so it can be a little bit more tasty because it's super dull. And maybe I'm going to go a little bit less. So if I do a chord, it's not so, you know, wild. And on top, if you want, you know, you can go aggressive if you want. Even go up on the feedback, maybe go up on dynamics, go up on the diffuse. and lo-fi, you can start getting, you know, wild type of sounds. You know, at the end of the day, it's completely up to you. Alright, so this is what you can do with this plugin, and you know, it's quite a lot, and we still need to talk about the filter. Alright, so I'm back to a default patch, and now we need to discuss the filter. And if you're thinking this is a mini Pro Q type of thing, you know, with timeless, yeah, the answer is yes, but you have a lot of extra functions. This is actually more like a Volcano with a tiny little bit of Pro Q3. And if you don't know, Volcano is a filter type of plugin from Fabfilter. Now on this one, what you can do, and you already have two right here, I'm going to delete them, just going to go there and just delete them. You can add to up to 6 different filters. If I click it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, and then 6. If I click, it's not letting me. So you can only add up to 6. And right here, when you hover on one of them, you will be getting pretty much what you get with Pro Q. Even you can go here or just disable or just change the values with the control. If you go maybe right here, you can hold control and go down and change the Q, or go up and change the Q. You can also do it with the mouse wheel. Right, so, you know, it's pretty much like a Pro Q. If you click right here, you have a lot more options, just like Pro Q. You have a low pass, you can use a high pass, you can have a band pass, a bell, a low shelf, high shelf, and notch. And again, I know that I'm not showing you anything new. Now here comes the main difference. If I go maybe to whatever, you know what, we don't need them all. I'm gonna delete some of them. I'm gonna go here, just delete them. There we go. If I go maybe to this one and I click and I go to a low pass, the low pass, high pass, and band pass are going to be completely, and maybe going to do a high pass, are completely different from the other ones. These ones are more from Volcano, because notice that you have an option right here. So this filter, these are filters. You know, if I go right here, you can use different types of filters. Some of them are just very analog and they have a very specific sound, like you would get on maybe a synthesizer when you use a filter. Well, you know, this is the same idea. Now, if I play something, of course, these are filters. And I go maybe here, I'm gonna do a low pass. If I chop it down, and maybe I'm gonna delete this and just use one single one. I'm going to be chopping whatever that goes into the feedback loop, so, you know, we get nothing. If I open more, of course, we're going to get more. It's just a filter. Remember that we can go here and maybe select a different filter, and notice it sounds much different. And if you want to, you can filter it like, or sweep, like you would do on a synthesizer. Alright, so if you go all the way down to clean, it's just gonna work like a normal filter that maybe you get on a equalizer, and the other ones are just more, you know, synth type of filters. Now you get this with the high pass as well. You get this with the band pass. Notice that you get all the types, but you don't get with the other ones. You don't get it with the bell. You don't get it with the shelf, and you know, you don't get it with the notch. I'm gonna go to maybe a high pass, and when you go over here with the other one, when you do click and you drag, you change, and I'm gonna show you when you click and you drag, you change the Q, or when you use the mouse wheel, you change the Q as well. With these ones, you don't change the Q. What you change is the slope, right? So if I go here, you get it. Now if I click this, when you're selecting a low pass, high pass, or band pass, you get right here the slope. So you can, of course, click it and just change it from here. But you know, you can do it with control or your mouse wheel. Same thing goes for the other ones. If I go to band pass, you know, you can change the slope, and you can select the slope from here. I'm gonna delete this, and I'm gonna go to a high pass, so I can show you actually the low pass. So I can show you that, you know, you get pretty much the same deal. Now, when you control and you hold the control and then you click and you drag horizontally, notice that it says pan. So it's changing the panning from left and right, just like, we can do with the rest of the plugin. So this means that now on the left, it's going to create a peak, and on the right, and we are talking about stereo, is going to create a peak. So when you play, if I play something, it's going to give you a nice stereo type of effect because you're boosting something on the left and something else on the right. And now you can do this with all the filters that you get right here. And if I go up, you can really hear the difference. All right. Now I'm going to go right here and I'm going to be adding a low pass. And I'm going to make it, not super, super aggressive. I'm going to make it a 6 dB per octave. So of course, if I play this, we assume that since I'm using a low pass right here, I cannot use more because I'm already using it. Well, this again works like a volcano. This is a volcano feature. You can stack filters. So if I add another low pass, I can do so. If I keep adding low pass filters, we can keep adding and adding and adding. And I'm going to do maybe just 5. So since, of course, the first one, it's filtering a lot, the second filter that comes after the one is going to be affected. We can still affect the sound a tiny little bit. As the 2 is before the 3, so, it's going to affect what the 3 can do, and then the 4th, and then the 5. And it's because all the filters in this case are going to be in series. It's a serial. And this takes us to the routing. So when you're standing on serial, this is what's going to happen. If you have a filter right at the beginning and you are just filtering everything, well, this will affect all the other filters that, go after the first one. And this is why you get this yellow line telling you what you are doing. If I remove this one, well, it's going to be a little bit different. Now the 2 is affecting or chopping everything, and there's nothing left for the 3, 4, and 5. If I go here, it's going to be a little bit different. Now the 3 is chopping a lot of frequencies. Now this is how the routing works. By default, it's going to be serial, but you can change it to parallel or per channel. And for now, I'm going to be going here, just going to put them right here. And I'm going to go to the parallel and notice how much this changes. So the filters, when you're using parallel, they're independent and they receive the same input, and you can do whatever you want right here. And at the end, everything is going to get summed and it's going to come out. This is why parallel is completely different than serial. And, it depends on what you want to do in terms of filters. So this is, again, it's the parallel. Then you have the per channel. And this one is, again, it's just super cool like the other ones. If I click it, notice that everything goes super wide. And for now, you know what? I'm going to be going right here and just deleting all the different filters. Now, when you use per channel, it's talking about the left or the right or the mid and the side, because if you go to channel mode, you can choose between left and right or mid and side if you wanted to. In this case, I'm just going to keep left and right. When you use a per channel, the odd filters are going to be for the left and the even for the right. So if I click something like a bell, and I adding the one, which is going to be odd, well, this one is going to left. And if I do a second, this one is red. So this one is going to be on the right. And, you keep adding ones, and the odd ones are going to be on the left, and the even ones are going to be on the right. So now, again, it's going to be per channel. And since you have 6, you can use 3 filters for the left and 3 filters for the right. Or if you're using mid side, it's 3 for the mid and 3 for the side. It's just completely different from the other ones. And they will, generate or just filter whatever that you're doing on a different way. All right, so, pretty cool. This is something that you can do on Volcano. If you don't know Volcano, that's it's a fantastic plugin from Fabfilter. Okay, so now it's time to talk about the modulations. So when you click right here, you have a lot of different options. I'm going to be starting with the XLFO. Now, when you open an LFO, you might have something from before. If you click this icon at the bottom, you will have different options and a lot of different templates to create, you have sequences and, you, you have a lot of different templates, and you can even save your own after you create them. But first we need to create something. I'm gonna stay on a sine wave, and we're gonna be using this for now. And to use it, we just need to grab this tiny little thing that it's blinking, and we need to map it to something. I'm gonna click and hold the click, and I'm gonna drag. Whatever is highlighted, I mean not dark or grayed out, it means that you can modulate that thing. So in this case, I'm gonna be going to the filter. I'm gonna delete that filter, and I'm gonna enable this one so we can see the movement or the modulation that we are doing. So I'm gonna be grabbing this, and I'm gonna go right here, and notice that you can modulate the peak, the pan. You can modulate a lot of things. You can even modulate the taps. If I create a tap, just to show you, you can go here and modulate the volume, the timing, and the panning. It's just a fantastic little plugin. Let me just delete this tab. I'm gonna go back, and I want to go to the frequency of the filter, and as you do so, it's going to give you this. This is going to be the intensity of the modulation. If I go down, it's pretty much nothing, but if I go up, the modulation is going to be more intense. Also, notice that you have a plus and you have a minus, and by clicking this, you are not making it unipolar or bipolar. You're just changing or inverting the phase pretty much. I'm going to be doing around the 300s, something like that. I'm just going to go back to our module right here. Since we have a sine wave, this will move up and down. And also, when we are on a module, you have a tiny light right here. This will show you how the modulation is. This is, if you don't have a visual reference, by watching this, you know how this is going. It's going from negatives to positives and then back to negatives. All right, so the first thing that we need to learn about the XLFO is going to be the frequency knob. If we go down, it's going to go slower. And if I go up, it's going to go faster, right? So we go with a faster LFO. And if you go super fast, it's going to be way too fast. By default, you're not into sync. You're doing hertz. So that's why you can, really go fast. But if you want to, you can go to this option, and you have a lot of different options. You can use the subdivisions and sync it to whatever, tempo you have on your DAW. Maybe I'm going to be doing, 1 bar, for example. So once you do so, notice that it's just, is going to do that. But then you have some dots right here. And notice that you don't have dotted, you don't have triplets. It's because it's going to be this, tiny little dots. So if you click the dots, now it's going to be, dotted and then triplets and so on and so on and so on. So whenever you want to sync it, you choose something. And then if you want to go to triplets, you just, click it and go there. Still, you can offset by dragging the control just like this. But if you want to go back to the center, you just click the white dot and you're going to go there. Now, by default, the LFO or whatever you have right here is going to run free. It never stops. So if I play something, notice that the LFO doesn't change. This means that it runs free. It doesn't care when I'm playing a key or when maybe a sound enters to the delay stage or the plugin, right? It doesn't care. It's running free. So you can change how this works. If you go to this option and you click it, by default, it's going to be off. And notice this is MIDI, has the MIDI icon. So if it's off, it means that it's going to run free. If you have a re-trigger, it means that if I'm playing something, it's going to restart every time I'm playing a key. Where is going to restart? If you have it right here, this is the start of the LFO. So it will always start at the beginning. We're going to talk about this in a minute. Now, if I go to legato, it means that it's going to work in legato mode. It will retrigger only if you're not holding a key. So if I play keys, it will always retrigger. Now I'm going to play a key, I'm going to hold it, and I'm holding the key, and I'm going to be playing a new key. And notice it's not re-triggering because I'm holding a key. This is how legato works. If I release and I play a new key, it will re-trigger. We are using a sine wave and we can see the instruction right here, but all of this, it's about the balance. And notice it says offset and bal for balance. So right now it's a sine wave, but if I go to the left side, instead of having a sine wave, notice how this moves. Is a little bit different. So you're just offsetting whatever waveform you have right here to a saw or a ramp. So if I go to the other side, right here, notice that at some point it's going to go here and then go all the way down. So now it's just, a saw. or in this case, a ramp up. The other one, the other control, super important control, is going to be the glide. So usually glide, it's like slew, it will smooth the changes. Well, right here, again, it's just a little bit weird. Right now we have a sine wave, but if I move the glide, it will start turning into a square wave. And this is, again, how it works. You have a sine wave, we go all the other way, and it's going to be a square. Now, if you stand at the center, it's still going to be a square. I'm going to show you why in a second. But again, you can choose if you want a square or you want a sine wave. And whatever it is that you do on the balance, it will affect, whatever waveform you have right here. Now, if you think about this, you can now use the most common waveforms that you could get. A sine wave, a square, or maybe a saw, or maybe a ramp up. Now, the next thing is going to be the controls that you have right here. By default, right now, it's going to be bipolar. It goes from here, from the center, up and then down. So this is bipolar. It's going up and down. So how can I make it unipolar? So we have two different steps. Notice it says 1 and then it says 2. If I grab this one and I go up, right now, I'm putting it at center, and now it's going to be unipolar, right? And we can do the same thing, but backwards. We can just go into negatives because this is not a standard LFO. It's more like a, let's say sequence or envelope generator. I'm going to go back to defaults. If I go right here, you have the minus and you have the plus. Whenever I click this, it's going to add, a new step. And I'm going to go all the way maybe to 8. If I want to remove a step, I just need to select a step and just need to do minus and it will delete that step. In this case, I'm going to be adding 8. And right here, by dragging these controls, you can create, different shapes. And whatever it is that you create right here is whatever the LFO will do. And one thing that you need to know is that the first step and the last step are really connected. If I change the 1, notice it's changing the 8, the ending of the 8. And it's because it needs to start and end at the same position. Now, since we have something that maybe moves around a lot, maybe if I play something, we're gonna get something cool. If we're gonna open it a little bit more, there we go. We don't have a lot of feedback. I'm gonna be adding feedback, and maybe go here. There we go. Gonna go more wet. And this is what you can do with this tiny little plugin. Create cool little effects. All right, so let's keep talking about what the options that we have right here for each of the steps. Now, when I select a step, all the different steps, and notice I'm clicking the 5 and it says step 5, and then you have different controls for all the different steps. In this case, if I wanted to go to 4, I can click random, and that step, or maybe the 5 and then maybe the 6 are going to be random. So, whatever it is that it does, we cannot control it because it's going to be random. Now, if you want to get out or make it not random, you just can click there and just get out of the random feature. If I go to 5, then you have the value. And this is, what we can do right here. Notice that if I move it with my mouse, it's going to be the value. Now, then you have the glide and then you have the type right here. So we kind of already know what the glide does, and it's going to be the same thing that we have right here. But there's a tiny little trick. I'm going to go to the 4 and just disable the random. If I select the number 4 and move the glide, nothing happens. If I maybe do control and select many at once, we can of course change the value of all. We can make them all random if we wanted to. But also, what I want to do, I want to select a lot of different steps. I'm going to do 4, 5, and 6, and I'm going to change the glide. Notice that nothing happens. Now, this control only works when we are at 50% on the glide, because this one, what it will do, it will just change the curve of that step. See, if I go up on the glide of the 6, notice that we have a tiny little curve. If I go to the 5 and I select it, and then I change the glide, now we can, create different curves for all the different steps. Now, one thing that you need to know is that this option lets you select the type of curve. Maybe for the number 1, I'm going to go to the 1, I can make it maybe linear. And if I go up, it's going to be linear. I'm going to go to the number 4, and the number 4 is going to be a square. And if I do right here, just go up, it's going to give you a kind of an exponential type of curve. You can see it. Then if I go to the other one, it's going to be like a logarithmic. And if I maybe going to go to the number 3, I'm going to go to the sign, which is the one that we have by default. So just like I said before, just by doing this and using all of these controls, you can create very interesting modulations, right? So there you go. So very easy to use once you get it. But first, when you when you first look at this, it's just a little bit confusing. Right here you have a big arrow, and this is going to be the phase offset. So right now the waveform, the modulation starts on the 0. And I'm gonna need to drag it and put it right here. Starts, at the beginning of the modulation, but we can, if we wanted to, we can start on a different position. Maybe the step number 4 is gonna be the beginning of our, our modulation, and it's gonna start right here and then loop back. If you want to reset this to the beginning of the waveform, you need to hold the control and then just click the arrow. Alright, so that's pretty much it. I'm going to go here and add a new XLFO. And if you're using a different modulation, it doesn't have to be an LFO. You can use whatever you want. You can, modulate some other controls from other modulators. Just to give you an example, another thing that, you can do with this plugin. Let's say I'm, using two XLFO. So I can go right here when I'm just mapping the frequency. And when I do so, this one is going to be, modulating, the frequency is going to be modulated by 2 different LFOs. This is something that you can do. Or maybe I can graph this and modulate the value of the first modulator. So I'm modulating the instruction or the level of the first modulation. And if I wanted to, I can, again, bring a new XLFO and modulate the modulator that it's modulating the modulator. So you can go really, really crazy on this one. Let me just delete all of this. I'm going to go back to our LFO. Like I said before, you can click right here at the bottom, maybe double click and, rename this to awesome or something like that. And you can, of course, save it so you can use it later. Now, another thing that you can do on pretty much all, at least on this modulator, if you hover on top, it's going to give you 2 options. First, it's going to be the mode, and then the timing. This is the time at the top, and at the left, at the right, is going to be the glide. So if I click and hold, if I go and drag it horizontally, you're going to be changing the glide. So you don't need to enter to change the glide. You can do it directly from here. And the other one, if you click it and you drag it horizontally, it's going to be the sync if you are on sync. And as you remember, maybe I'm on sync. But if I go to free, now it's going to be the free. But then it says control and sync mode. So if I do control, press it, hold it, now I'm going to be doing sync. Okay, so I'm going to be deleting this, and by default, it's going to delete the modulation. If I add a new one, in this case, we're going to talk about the envelope generator, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to map it to the frequency so we can see what's going on. And I'm going to be doing something like, maybe to the 300. So this is an envelope generator, right? It just creates an envelope. And in order for this to react or to create a modulation, it's just not like an LFO that it can create a modulation of its own. It needs to receive some input. And whatever input that we create is going to create an envelope and then, run the modulation. In this case, I'm playing a key and will only react when I play a key because it has a threshold. When the sound goes over the threshold, the envelope will react and it will run the modulation. If I go over the threshold, there is no modulation. Let me just do it very softly. That is, then if I'm not going over the threshold, it's not running a modulation. But if I play hard, it will go over the modulation and run whatever it is that you have right here. So on this one is the common ADSR. You have a maybe not so common. You have an attack, decay, sustain, and at the end you have a hold, and then you have a release. So you can, maybe go down, and it will react differently. Now, I'm going to be playing a clip. If I show you the clip right now, everything is sustained notes. So if I play it, notice that we are over the threshold. But still, this is just not reacting. Now, if I play it again, I'm going to go up on the sustain. It will react only to the first time that we play. And this is because, of course, this is reacting to the levels. And since the level never goes below the threshold, the envelope will never restart. Even if I make it super plucky like this, like a very short envelope, it will never restart or re-trigger again because it never goes below the threshold. And I'm telling you this because you have different modes right here. Now, before we go to the different modes, I'm going to be playing a different clip. And now we have more sustain notes. More staccato notes. So if I go to the envelope, notice that now it's reacting because we have staccato notes. We don't have a sustain. So at some point, the level goes down and then goes up. And if we are using it that way, we can, run a modulation, or we can see it at least. And right here, what we need to do is to change the envelope instruction. Now remember that you can, maybe not remember, but you can go here and change the slope of the envelope or the different points. Maybe make it more linear, exponential, or logarithmic. Alright, so, very simple controls. Now, then you have these options right here. If I go right here, you have the normal, which is what we've been using, and then you have a neutral sustain. If I go to neutral and then sustain, I'm gonna go to the first clip where we are playing sustain notes. This is what happens. It's going right here, and I'm gonna go down because it's just resonating. Notice it goes to negatives. So how this works is that the sustain is gonna control how much it goes into negatives. I'm going to be putting it maybe around here so we can see that it's on negatives. Now, if I play a chord or just a key or something, it will react, the envelope will react, it will go up because that's what we wanted to do. But then at some point when I release and it goes below the threshold, the envelope will go down. So it's starting from below the whatever frequency we have right here. And then it's going up. If I go really up, it's going to go really down and start, right here. And it's going to meet wherever we have the value. So we're just like offsetting the modulation a little bit. If I go all the way down, it will never go down, right? It starts from here and then goes up. If I go up on the sustain, it starts down and then goes up to this point. And all of this, depends on what you want to do or whatever it is that you're doing. Now, then you have different modes, the normal input, the sidechain, and the MIDI. Now, in the case of the sidechain, what you can do is that instead of listening to whatever audio that you're playing, in this case, I'm going to be playing that clip. Right now, this threshold is listening to the synthesizer to run a modulation. And I'm going to be doing maybe normal, and then just do something else. All right, I guess that's fine. Now, of course, if I play it again, it will only react the first time and then it's just not reacting. But if I choose the sidechain, now what I can do, I can go to the actual plugin and select a different source. In this case, selecting other sound and then pre, and this is just a different synthesizer that is just playing some staccato notes. Let me just play it back. It's doing that. Now when it does it, notice that the threshold is now listening to the sidechain, so it will only react to whatever other sound that we are listening to on that plugin. But if I play the synthesizer and go down on the other sound, notice that this is moving, following the other groove, that groove. And I'm going down in volume of the other sound, and it's only grooving for that. Now, if I click on this one, we are just auditioning whatever the plugin is listening on the other sound, the other channel. So we could just, hear it and then fine tune it if he wants to. And when I release it, it goes back. And the modulation will do whatever is that we instruct. And this is just, very, very cool. Alright, so, this is how the envelope works. Right, so I'm gonna be stopping it, and you have more options. Of course, if you close it, you have again the options right here. If I hover, it's drag to adjust the release, and then just, for the attack. And if I do control, it's pretty much the same thing. The next modulator, which is going to be the envelope follower. Now this one, it's pretty similar to the envelope generator in normal input mode. And right here, you have two modes. If I go here, you have the envelope, and then you have the transient. I'm going to be mapping the frequency just like we did before, and I'm going to be doing around 300. I guess that's fine. I play the clip. This is what we get. Right here, you don't have a lot of different controls like the envelope generator. You just have an attack, and you just have a release. And since I'm playing longer notes, maybe I'm gonna go down in volume. Notice that the envelope is trying to react to whatever sound that we are inputting. Now, of course, it goes up and it never goes down because it's a constant type of sound. If I stop it and play the other clip, it's gonna be a little bit different. Now, the controls that you have, it's gonna be release, which is gonna be making it longer. And the other one is going to be the attack. It's going to be smooth transitioning up. And this is the only thing that you get for this one. Now, then you have the other mode. This is the normal mode, the envelope. The transient, what it will just make everything shorter. So you have an attack, and then you have a release that can make it longer, but it's just much shorter. That's why it's called transient, I guess. And just here, like before, we have the normal input, or we have the sidechain, just like the envelope generator. We can listen to an external input and have it react to that. I'm gonna go to the sidechain, and if I play back the other sound and click here, as I'm, reusing the same thing than before, I'm using that other sound synthesizer. If I release it, this of course will react to the sidechain. So if you think about this, it's pretty similar to the envelope generator. Now that we know the envelope generator, we know the XLFO, and this one, everything starts getting, really simple. All right, so I'm gonna get out of the sidechain, and I'm gonna use the normal input. And you know what? I'm gonna be deleting this modulator. Now, when you click on the add modulation, again, you have more controls. You have the Midi Source. Now, when you go to Midi Source and you add it right here, you have different options. Of course, you have your curves. I'm gonna show you that in a minute. But you can use different type of instructions. You can use a mod wheel if you're using a synthesizer. I'm sorry, a keyboard, MIDI keyboard. You can use the pitch bend or the velocity of the aftertouch of whatever is that you're trying to use. If you're using this on a MIDI channel. And again, you can use a controller. So if I select the controller, then of course we need to select the MIDI source number. Then we need to pass the MIDI number. In this case, I'm going to be using my mod wheel. Since I'm using a MIDI controller, when I play it, of course, I need to map it to something. I'm going to go to the filter. I'm going to go aggressively. If I played something right now, I get that. Now I'm going to go to my mod wheel. When I move the mod wheel, we can hear, and I have a little bit of vibrato on the synthesizer, but we can see that the right here the modulation is going up because I'm using my mod wheel, and I'm doing it so right now. Now you can use whatever it is that you want. Maybe I want aftertouch, or maybe I want the velocity, or maybe the pitch bend. Why not? I'm gonna be selecting aftertouch. I'm gonna play something, and now I'm using the aftertouch of my MIDI keyboard. Now, all this is just super useful when you're using a synthesizer or MIDI keyboard, right? So I'm gonna close this, and we need to talk about the other ones. And then notice that we covered pretty much everything. We just need to talk about the new slider and the XY controller. And these ones are super related. I'm gonna bring the slider. So the slider and the XY controller both are more like utilities. And I'm gonna start again with the slider. I can grab this and go maybe to the frequency, and whatever I do right here, this is going to be the level. If I go up, whatever modulation I have right here is going to go up, and if I go down, it's going to go down. when you click right here, you have the arrow. You can go to centered, and now the instruction is going to be bipolar. If I go up, it's going to go up. If I go down, it's going to be go down. Now, what is the point of having this control? Because, if I play something, it cannot move on its own. I need to manually do it. Well, again, this is a utility. So maybe I'm doing some modulation and I want to control the values. Well, we can do it with this one. I'm going to be going to positive. So I can only go up. So I'm going to be using I'm going to go to the feedback. I'm going to go right there. I can bring maybe a new XLFO and use something like, I don't know, step sequencer or something like that. I guess that's fine. I could go here and I can control or do the feedback and control maybe with this controller. If I'm mapping to the feedback, notice that we can see right here the modulation, but it's not happening because this control is all the way down. Now as I go up, we're gonna let the modulation go. If I bring maybe a new XLFO, I do maybe something different, something like a sine wave, I can go to maybe the filter frequency, and we are controlling both at once. But with this, we control the intensity, right? Nothing. And we do something. This is why we would use the XY or this controller. Now I'm gonna delete all of this right here, and I'm gonna be adding a new LFO. And you know what? I'm gonna go to slider, and if I click on this one, this can be changed to an XY slider. Now on this one, you have the X-axis and you have the Y-axis. X is going to be horizontal, and then Y is going to be vertical. So maybe on the X controller, I'm going to be modulating, I don't know, the frequency, and the Y is going to be modulating the feedback. And I'm doing different controls so we can see both moving. So now, when I play it, if I go up on the Y, notice that it's just doing some modulation. Of course, I'm going to need to adjust the values because it's just maybe way too low. I'm going to go up and then go up on the feedback as well. Why not? Now, if I go down, all the way down right here to this point, no modulation is going on. If I go up only on the Y-axis vertically, the feedback will only go up, but the frequency is not going up. And if I move on the X-axis, and all the way up, the frequency is growing. If I go down on the Y, but keep the X all the way to the right, only the frequency is moving. All right, so what's the point of doing all of this? I'm going to go maybe here to nothing. I'm going to bring a new XLFO, and just bring whatever. And now this one is going to be controlled by the X. This is the X. And maybe a new XLFO, just to do something else, I'm going to use a sine wave. And this one is going to be the Y. So if I go here, when I go up, whatever is that we are doing on the first one, the feedback, we are allowing it to pass. This is why the XY controller, works like this. If I go to Y and down, now we have the frequency going with whatever other modulator. And we can do both at the same time. Again, this is the main idea of the XY controller. Right? We can do both at the same time, or maybe a little bit of one and less of the other one, and so on and on and on. Notice that when I move the XY slider, it's going only but up. It's not going into negatives. So right now it's unipolar. We can take the XY, just click the arrow right here and go to centered, and now it's going to be, bipolar. If I play it, we can go up, and then we can go down if we want to. Depends on, what you want to do. All right, so that's it. That's pretty much, again, all the modulators. Now, of course, you need to be creative. You need to bring modulators and map it to different things. Maybe you have different taps and you want to modulate the taps. You can do so. Like I said before, I'm going to be modulating this. And this one is going to be, I don't know, modulated by the X controller. And I'm going to go here. And this one is going to be, I don't know, the panning or something like that. And once we do so, we have a lot of things moving And this is why I think this is one of the best delays in the market, because, of the possibilities. Now, if you want something simple, well, you can do simple with this, but, maybe just find a different plugin. But if you want to go over the limits and just create very cool sounds, this one is a very good choice. Just to finish, remember that you have the A and the B, so you can always toggle between the A and the B. And if you want to redo and undo, you have your undo and redo right here. And again, you just need to go through the different presets and find something, and then just, see whatever they are doing right here, where they are mapping it, and of course, how it sounds. Okay, so that's pretty much it. It was a little bit long and wild, but it's a very complete plugin. If you liked all of this and you learned something new, please like and subscribe. This channel is supported by viewers only. If you want to buy me a coffee just to say thanks and help the channel keep going on, you can. You have links at the description for PayPal, YouTube Thanks, and Patreon.